After great reception and box office returns from the previous film, producer Frank Mancuso Jr. didn't get on with this film's director, Danny Steinman. Mancuso called Steinman a pervert and called this film a softcore porn sex movie rather than a slasher horror film in Danny Steinman's 1985 film, Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, June.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. My name is Connor Dunham and I am back with Chris, and today we are doing Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, or Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. And this is Chris and I were just talking about this. This is a film I remember not liking when I was younger, and this is one of those that, spoiler alert, it's kind of a whodunit, but it's not Jason. Like, they mentioned Jason, and he's in the film and with like dream sequences and stuff, and we'll get into more of it. But it's I always he had a different like mask in this. With it didn't have the red like hash marks and stuff on the cheek. It had like the blue ones, and it was just a little bit funky for me when I was younger. And I was like, all right, well, he's got a new mask and stuff, and then come find out it's not actually Jason. Kind of ruined the movie for me when I was younger. But the more I watch this film, I guess the more I kind of enjoy it for what it is, with knowing that Jason's not in the film besides in the dream sequences and whatnot. But this is one I can turn on and shut my brain off and just have a good time with it for the little 90-minute film that it is.
Yeah, once I kind of got to the era of renting all of these movies on from the local Blockbuster and then collecting them on DVD, this was always just kind of one that was like, you're not gonna miss any of them in your collection, and so it's gonna be there, and you're gonna watch it when you watch through all of them because it's part of the series. But it has that same kind of issue that Halloween 3 has, where it tries to, not as drastically as Halloween 3, but it tries to go into a new direction with the series. And had the rest of the franchise continue down the new direction that either of those movies set, I think these would be more fondly remembered. But the fact that they went right back, in the case of Halloween, to Michael in part 4, and then right back to Jason in part 6, it makes these ones feel even more odd and even more like anomalies, and people will actively kind of skip them and ignore them and things of that nature, just because there's such departures from the main storyline. And you know in terms of the kills and the basic outline, it's not a terrible movie. It seems to suffer particularly harshly from the censors and the ratings board and the cuts they had to make. But generally, it's just kind of like a middle of the road kind of an entry with like baseline concepts that are kind of kind of dumb because it's not Jason, and they don't really do enough with the whodunit storyline to make it compelling from that angle either. So it's kind of a middle of the road kind of entry in the franchise.
Yeah, and Chris, one thing that kind of gets me is all like the weird camera angles you get of Roy, or the one of the ambulance members, the paramedics. He's like they're trying to force feed you that it's him, so you almost think that like it's not in the end, and then it turns out being him, and you're like, oh, okay, so they weren't really setting up anything with all like the weird zoom in camera angles or like the fades to black.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, you had kind of he reacts to the dead body early on, and I mean, And maybe for people watching it in real time, you do have a character actively murder another character at the beginning of the movie, and so I suppose that character would be the top contender for a potential killer of this movie, but like they apprehend him. Like if that character had ran away, then him being at large, you'd be like, well, that guy's just out there. He's snapped now, and he's killed one person, and now he's going to kill the rest of us. Like that could have been an interesting concept. Uh, like it's just one of those things. Like between like red herrings and suspects and stuff, like a who done it kind of is a little. It's hard to do if you're not really committing to letting people. It feels like the movie wants to make you believe that it's actually Jason, to a degree, so that you're surprised when it's not. When I feel like the better money might have been to like lean into like it's definitely not Jason and it's somebody and we don't know who it is. I'm not sure. Who knows?
Yeah, another one of the things I wanted to bring up that kind of like it gave me a little laugh the other day, watching it, was the sheriff is like, what the hell is going on here? And clearly he's not talking to anyone near him. And Roy's like, yeah, you talking to me, sheriff? And it's just little things like that make you like, the director was trying to say like, pinpoint this guy, like he was always in the background of the shots, or he always had the evil looking face. Like if you're gonna do that, set it up to be him, and then have it not be him. Have it be a character that we would have never thought.
Yeah, it feels like they didn't know quite how to play. Do you make it obvious? Do you hide it so much that people complain that nobody could have seen it coming? Like a random, do you set it up but then run the risk of people being able to tell too easily? Do you want a misdirection? Do you want a red herring? Do you want to just kind of make it obvious? Do you want to lean into it? Like the movie kind of has a bit of an identity crisis in that way, and then you have them actively dressing up as Jason, which feels like it's just meant like they wanted a way to get that sort of hockey mask and like bald head, machete wielding iconography without going against like Jason being dead. So it's interesting.
Well, here, let me give you a little history on it for the time being, and we'll keep moving on with this one. Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, again also known as Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, is a 1985 American slasher film directed by Danny Steinman and starring Melanie Kinnaman, John Shepard, and Shavar Ross. The film also features a cameo appearance from Corey Feldman early on, who portrayed Tommy Jarvis in the previous film. This is a sequel to Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter from 1984, and the fifth installment in the Friday the 13th franchise. This film was shot in California in 1984 on a budget of $2.2 million. A New Beginning was released theatrically on March 22nd, 1985. The film was initially going to set up a new trilogy of films with a different villain for the series, but after a disappointing reception from fans and a steep decline in box office receipts from Friday the 13th Part 3 and The Final Chapter, Jason Voorhees was brought back for the next installment, Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, in 1986, and then he has been the main antagonist in the series ever since. And in addition to the weak box office returns, the film received mostly negative reviews from critics, which back then horror films were generally panned by critics no matter how good they were, with
Yeah,
a few being an exception like the original Halloween and a very few others.
yeah, and then this is one of those that even among horror fans gets negative reviews. So no surprise at all that the critics didn't like it.
No, I mean, it's for me, and for most fans or like friends of mine that I've talked to that have seen all the films or such, it's a middle of the pack film. It's one of those that you can go with or without, but it's one of the films that if you put it on, it's a quick 90 minutes, and grab some popcorn and hang out, or sit and watch it with your girlfriend, or whatever. You'll have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's some intrigue to be added that if you were gonna sit down and have a marathon of all the films with someone who literally knew nothing, it does maybe seem like it's setting you up for the series to take a new direction. and then it doesn't. So that can kind of be a little fun in and of itself. But I feel that pop culture being the way it is, even people who know nothing about Friday the 13th at least know Jason, and that it's basically always Jason. In the same way that most people don't realize that the first, or most common folk don't remember that the first film doesn't have Jason as the killer. I think most people do know, well, Jason's a killer in all of them. So when you run into an entry that doesn't have him, you have to be assuming, well, this is like a temporary thing or a one-off thing, And like for my money, if it weren't for like my movie OCD, with these films having part 5, part 6 in the title, I'd be one of those people that I would just skip straight from the final chapter to Jason Lives, and that would be simple enough for me.
Yeah, I could see that. Like I said, when I was younger, I did not like this movie. I was not a fan of watching it. But as I've gotten older, it's one of the ones when I'm picking up the house or something like that, it's one of the ones I'll throw on in the background when I'm doing something for some background noise or some background entertainment. There's ones in the franchise to where if I'm putting it on, I have to sit down and watch it because otherwise I'll catch myself just gawking at the TV and not doing anything that I planned, like whatever, the laundry or cleaning the house, whatever it may be. So when I'm doing things like that, I'll put on something that I know I don't have to sit down and pay attention to. It's one of those middle of the pack, not one of my favorites of the franchise.
Yeah, and from what I understand, originally Corey Feldman was gonna reprise the lead role of Tommy throughout the whole film, and then I think it was that he was cast in Goonies, which threw his schedule off, and so they were only able to film that small cameo, and they did it like literally, like I think it was in Corey Feldman's backyard. So not that would have like turned the whole movie around and made it some masterpiece, but it would have given it a bit more of a cohesive through line with the previous entry, and it would have been interesting to see a version of this franchise where, killer or not, Tommy Jarvis and Corey Feldman as Tommy Jarvis kind of became more of a leading figure.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen that. I liked his character in the previous film, so I would have liked to seen what would have became if he would have starred in this film. But I did finally see the Goonies for the first time a couple years ago, and I really liked that film, so I'm glad he
Yeah.
was cast in that and did that over there.
Yeah, I actually hadn't seen it until a few years ago as well. I'd completely missed the boat on that. A lot of these sort of like those sort of descendants of E.T., those kind of kids going on kind of adventures that are a little dark and a little edgy, but still like family friendly kind of thing, like your Gremlins and your Goonies, and I'm sure I'm missing other ones. Like a lot of those movies I didn't really see growing up. I kind of like those weren't really like, I saw Gremlins and E.T. as a kid, but I missed the boat on Goonies until I was completely an adult.
Yeah, the first time I seen that I was maybe 27, so maybe 2020, 2021, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I want to say it had to be somewhere between 2018 and 2020 for me, because it was when I was dating my last girlfriend. So I mean, I would have been 26 to 27 as well.
Okay, all right. So we're both slacking on that one. It's good to know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, like Stand By Me was another one. Like, isn't Stand By Me the one where the kids like go on and find the dead body and all that stuff? Like all those kind of movies, those like kids in the woods going on an adventure kind of a movies. That I missed like all of those when I was growing up. That wasn't really my generation.
Well, we were busy watching the classic Godzilla movies then.
Yeah, exactly, precisely.
All right, well, let me get us into a trailer, and I'll read off a plot synopsis on this one, and then we will come back, get into some fun facts, some numbers, and then our favorites, and some more on the film.
If the memory of Jason still haunts you. You're not alone. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning.
Severe trauma at age 12. Brutal self-defense, murder of a psychopathic killer. Boy, they've given him every therapy they can think of. It's wonder his mind isn't fried with all the drugs they've given him.
The mindless, murderous fury that was buried with Jason has been reborn.
Pete!
And suddenly, terror has become child's play. Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning.
5 years after killing Jason Voorhees in Part 4, a teenage Tommy Jarvis is tormented by nightmares of the mass murderer, resulting in his internment in numerous psychiatric hospitals. He is eventually transferred to the Pinehurst halfway house managed by Dr. Matt Leder and his assistant Pam Roberts. There, Tommy meets a circle of other teens including lovers Eddie and Tina, the stutterer Jake, punk rocker Violet, the serious Robin, the compulsive eater Joey, and the young Reggie, whose grandfather George works as the facility's cook. The group is disliked by their neighbor Ethel, as Eddie and Tina have made a habit of engaging in sexual intercourse on her property. For this reason, Matt forbids the group from venturing outside the facility's premises. Vic, another patient in the institute, is gripped by a fit of madness caused by Joey's constant pestering and brutally kills him with an axe, leading to his arrest. That evening, two greasers, Vinny and Pete, are murdered by an unseen assailant after their car breaks down, and a diner waitress and her boyfriend are killed the following night. The sheriff hypothesizes that Jason Voorhees has come back to life and is the perpetrator of these murders, while Tommy himself is rendered a suspicious party. The next morning, Eddie and Tina disobediently go into the forest and have sex while smoking marijuana. They are watched by Ethel's farmhand Raymond, who is killed soon after. After returning from washing off in the pond, Eddie finds that Tina has been murdered with garden shears right through her eyes, and he soon meets the same fate by a band twisted right into his eyes and fracturing his skull. Meanwhile, Reggie begs his grandfather to visit his brother Demon, who has just returned to town, and Pam offers to accompany him while bringing Tommy along. As Pam and Reggie enjoy their visit, Demon offers them enchiladas with his girlfriend Anita. Tommy meets Ethel's son Junior and gets into a fight with him, but then runs away to the forest after realizing his actions. After Pam and Reggie leave to find Tommy, Demon has severe diarrhea from the enchiladas and runs to the outhouse. While using the outhouse, he and Anita are slaughtered. Upon Pam and Reggie's return to the Institute, they are warned of Matt and Reggie's grandfather's disappearing. Pam searches for them, entrusting Reggie to Violet, Jake, and Robin. At this time, Ethel and Junior are killed, as are Jake, Robin, and Violet after Reggie falls asleep. Reggie awakens just as Pam returns and they discover the trio's corpses in Tommy's room. Moments later, the killer, seemingly a resurrected Jason Voorhees, bursts into the house. After a long chase in which Pam and Reggie find the corpses of Matt and Reggie's grandfather, Jason is struck by a tractor and then lured into the barn. Tommy returns and is attacked by Jason. He defends himself but is knocked unconscious after being helped to the loft area of the barn. Pam and Reggie, who have had time to regroup, set a trap and kick Jason from the loft window, but he holds on and grabs Reggie. During the commotion, Tommy regains consciousness, grabs Jason's machete, cuts his hands off, and falls from the loft window onto a tractor harrow, which kills him instantly. In the process, the killer's hockey mask comes off, revealing that he is Roy Burns, one of the paramedics who arrived at the scene of Joey's murder. The police later identify Roy as Joey's father and determine that he went insane after his son's death and sought revenge, inspired by the stories of Jason's killing sprees. While recovering in the hospital, Tommy has another hallucination of Jason, but he faces his fears and makes him disappear. He then hears Pam approaching and smashes the window to appear as though he has escaped. When Pam rushes in, Tommy appears behind the door wearing Roy's hockey mask and wielding a kitchen knife. All right, Chris, how about we get into some quick fun facts on this one? I don't have too many to rattle your brain.
Sounds good to me.
Peter Brack's book, Crystal Lake Memories, The Complete History of Friday the 13th, details that behind the scenes of this production, it was plagued with hardcore drug use, mainly cocaine. So that was a huge factor in the problems with this film.
Why am I not surprised that a horror movie made in 1985 had a lot of cokeheads on the set?
Well, and then I don't know if you know this, that the director, Danny Steinman, he was a pornography director before he got this film, and I feel like most people that have seen this film can kind of tell that from from the film.
Yeah, from what I understand, yeah, when you have a lot of the more superficial fans singing the redeeming qualities on this movie, a lot of it is from the body count and the booby count, and they just attribute it to that. And I hear that the love scene in the woods was that there's a lot of removed footage from that scene. That I think there's a quote from the director saying something to the effect of like, "I shot a whole porno out there in the woods." So who knows how extensive and gratuitous that footage was originally before the MPAA got their hands on it.
Yeah, I don't know if I won't go into what some of the things he said, but while he was directing, in the behind the scenes footage or the Crystal Lake Memories, the actress who was in that scene she said that the director was yelling at her and the guy who was in the scene with her, harder, harder, grab her boob, do this. It's like, Jesus. And then
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's it's interesting. Like yeah. I mean, these movies always get cut, but something tells me that he was out there making a whole different kind of movie. Maybe.
yeah, this is definitely one of the more kind of on the trashier side with like I remember
Yeah.
them saying like the main character of Pam, she was like, I didn't wear a bra the entire shoot. The director did not want me to wear a bra the entire shoot, so she didn't.
Oh my.
Like,
Oh my goodness. Like, yeah, the one character that's portrayed with a little bit of class, and he's like, you don't get to wear a bra.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
I mean, this is kind of like it's kind of like dirty, sleazy. Like this. Not that these films are ever like the classiest, but there's something kind of trashy about this one in particular. Particularly like the character of like Ethel and Junior. Like there's just like a grossness to this movie, like baseline. I don't know if it's how they filmed it or just all of the stuff they portray. I don't know. It's just something about this one that it's kind of like off-putting and unappealing to look at. I don't know.
yeah, you got those two characters, and then you got like the homeless guy who comes up and wants to,
Yeah, the
he's trying to
creeper.
earn a
Yeah,
meal.
yeah. And, yeah, and he's peeping Tom on him from the woods. Yeah, just like a lot of sleaze.
Yeah, that it definitely. If you didn't, if you don't know about this film, if you watch it, you can definitely tell that the director was he had some history and some other filmography.
Yeah, yeah. Something tells me that stashed away in his personal collection would be all of the footage that was cut from this movie. Probably.
Oh, I'll go on to the next one for you. This film is the only entry in the Friday the 13th film series to feature a hockey mask design with the two blue triangles pointing downward, as opposed to the more common variant of three red triangles with the lower two pointing upward on the hockey mask.
Yeah, people refer to those things as chevrons. The little insignias on the mask, they call them chevrons. I had never heard that term growing up. But yeah, and believe me, there are some hardcore Friday fans and they get very particular about if there's sort of promotional imagery or box art or disc art that has the blue chevrons on it. They go, why is Roy's mask on here? That's not Jason's mask. This is ridiculous. What are you doing? It's like, man, for me, like, I don't pay enough attention to those details. Like, the hockey mask is the hockey mask as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it does. It bothered me when I was younger, but now that I know what the film is and I'm a little older, I'll accept it. It was an imposter mask on an imposter Jason.
Exactly.
On January 13th, 2012, La La Land Records released a limited edition 6 CD box set containing Harry Manfredini's scores from the first 6 Friday the 13th films, and it sold out in less than 24 hours.
Wow. Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, I kind of want to know how many, what it was limited to, but
Yeah, how
I
many
couldn't
units it
find the
has.
number.
Yeah, it's like if it was like 10 million, that's very impressive. But if it was like 200, that's not as impressive. They're like, we made one. It sold out.
And Harry Manfredini bought it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, precisely.
And then my last one for you on this film is originally the producers had planned to make an entire new trilogy of films featuring a different villain. Again, this was scrapped in response to the backlash regarding Jason's absence, and then Jason was brought back immediately for the next film.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. And I mean, the way that the fourth one ended, it seemed like the clear kind of setup that if you would think that if you were looking to go from Jason to a new killer, that you would want to make it something that felt like it came organically out of the previous movies in the same way that Jason was Pamela Voorhees' son, and so it seemed like the obvious thing would be to have Tommy Jarvis being crazy and for him to be the killer. And I guess that's a twist that they were playing with of like, oh, maybe people think that it's Tommy and then it's not. But like you feel like that maybe would have been not that in hindsight I'm rooting and saying that oh Tommy should have become the killer because then that changes this whole dynamic. But you would think that would be where the producers' minds would be of like oh Tommy's going to be the new killer now because he was at least the main character of the last movie, and that becomes like the transition movie where Tommy goes crazy and now he's the killer.
Yeah, and you get the ending, the freeze frame at the ending of 4 where he kind of looks at the camera with like a little devious stare, and you're like, oh, okay, is this kid all right? Like when he was hacking away at Jason, he seemed to be enjoying himself a little too much, and he's weird, like kind of nerdy with making the masks and
Yeah,
whatnot.
and he shaved his head to kind of look like Jason, so it's like you could see it go into a weird direction where he's like obsessed with Jason and he sees himself as like Jason's replacement, and so he's like he's actively trying to like make himself look like Jason when he does these killings, like it's not like a possession thing, but like a literal like impersonation kind of a thing. Like you could kind of buy that.
Yeah, I mean, if they would have went that way, I mean, clearly it would have been up to the fans to decide. But I mean, as hardcore as Jason fans are, through those first 4, I think they found out what they wanted. So I think taking this a new route might have derailed the franchise.
Yeah, I don't think any non-Jason version of this movie would have made anyone particularly happy.
No, I do not think so either. That's all I got for fun facts for you once again, but I will get into some quick numbers so we can see what the film made and whatnot. So I'll have Chris get us our inflation differences or chart ready, and I'll give him some numbers for the budget and what the film grossed back in 1985.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, this had a budget of $2.2 million, and it grossed $22 million.
Yeah, so that's a nice 10 times multiplier, and so that would have been essentially like spending 6.4 million here in 2024 and making back 64 million. 10 times your investment is still pretty impressive, even when you consider the theaters getting their cut. That's still a very impressive return. In the 80s, the sort of video rental was taking off too, and horror movies in particular were always like big video rentals and all that stuff, and VHS sales. So yeah, 10 times the budget is good, and it's funny that was still seen as like kind of the decline and kind of not so good.
Well, yeah, when you think about it, what was the last one? Friday the 13th Part 4. It had a budget of just over 2 million again and made 33 million. So I mean, it made 11 million less this go round.
Yeah, losing a third of your box office sales is not ever what you want to see, for sure.
This film didn't do very good other places either. It has a 18% rating on Rotten Tomatoes with an average rating of 3.7 out of 10 and a 26% audience score based on over 50,000 reviews.
Yeah, this is like I said, this is that black sheep of the franchise where it's like this is the one that everyone kind of just consensus agrees is like the worst one that everyone hates the most. You know, like it's when people do their rankings or their this or that, it's the easy one for everyone to be like, this is the worst one. This is the one at the bottom.
I will give you a spoiler alert and tell you it is not at my bottom.
Oh, that's interesting. That is
We
interesting.
will once we finish the franchise, we'll figure out where it's at, but it is not at my bottom spot.
Interesting.
This film is rated a 4.7 out of 10 on IMDb, a 16% out of 100 on Metacritic. Google helped us out a little bit. 77% of Google users like this film. The film has 21 total kills, including dream sequences, which averages out to one kill every 4.38 minutes, which again takes over the fastest or most occurrences in the franchise.
Yeah, that's not so bad. I gotta say I do hate it when there's dream sequence kills because I always just think like, oh man, couldn't the resources have just been put toward a kill that actually happened in the movie? Like, not that they go that wild with the kills and the dream sequence in this movie. I think it's just two of them. But it's like I always see it and I'm like, man, I just like if you're gonna kill someone and do like this bloody on-screen death, like just do it for real, you know, in the movie.
Yeah, I was debating whether like do we count those first two dream sequence kills or not, and everywhere I looked up seemed to be counting those, so I was like, all right, well I'll count them in the average for the film.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you know, it's a yeah. There's not much to be said, you know. Keeping the kill count high certainly keeps things varied and interesting and kind of moving along, you know, just like an action movie needs action, a Friday the 13th movie needs the kills.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I got one more number for you here, and that is Jason's screen time. Is a total of 7 minutes and 7 seconds, or roughly 8% of the film, with Roy Jason or imposter Jason being 5 minutes and 42 seconds of that, and the actual Jason or dream Jason only being on screen for 1 minute and 25 seconds of the film.
Yeah, that's kind of it's kind of weird to talk about Jason screen time in a movie like this. You know, it's like it's either a dream or it's not actually him. But yeah, that's I mean seems about par for the course.
We'll just call it killer screen time for this
Yeah,
one.
exactly. Yeah, precisely.
All right, with numbers done, fun facts done, cruising along, do you want to go ahead and give me your favorite character for part 5 of the Friday the 13th franchise?
Sure. Not that there's many terribly likable characters in this movie. I have to just, I guess, like default to Pam, you know, because I mean, Tommy is kind of barely a character in this movie. I mean, you anything that you kind of like about Tommy is kind of just carry over from the last one. It's like in this one, he's kind of a stump on the log, you know. He's just kind of there. Like, like how much dialogue does Tommy even have in this movie? You know, like I feel like he says basically nothing. I don't know.
20
So
words or so?
yes, something like yeah. If you're not paying attention, you might not ever notice that he talks. You know, so it's like so. I guess Pam kind of fills the final girl role. She's not so bad, not so great either. But I mean, amongst this group of like annoying degenerates, like I guess like it's her or Demon, I suppose, that would be a favorite character, and that's about all I got to go with.
Yeah, Tommy, he's he's a little badass, like karate little guy in this film, you know. He
Yeah, it is so out of nowhere that when he just like opens up a can of whoop ass on someone in this movie, it's kind of like impressive, but it's like it's a little comedic because it's so out of nowhere. He's like pulling like some WWE moves on him or something.
Yeah, I mean, he beat the hell out of Junior, and then there's
Yeah.
I like Ethel. She was funny, but again, she's like a trashy, sleazy character.
Yeah, dude, I can't. Dude, Ethel and Junior are like like, every time I watch this movie, I'm like, okay, maybe it's not so bad. Like, not having Jason as a killer isn't so bad. Everything about Ethel Jr. just boils my blood. I cannat stand those characters.
Get in
Like,
here and eat my stew.
gosh, like, they're annoying, they're gross, they're kind of just grimy and dirty and nasty, and like their voices are annoying, their performances are kind of over the top and campy as all hell. Like, you big dildo and all that stuff. I'm like, golly, like it just feels kind of like weirdly like secondhand. Like, I get like secondhand cringe even just watching it. It's like, oh gosh, like probably like very very happy when those characters were finally killed off.
Yeah, the only thing they were good for, and that's if you have a decently good sense of humor, was some of their lines. Like, Junior's like, I ain't so pretty myself, I know, and she gets pissed off and goes over and like chops the turkey's head, and just little stupid stuff like that. It'll give you a little chuckle if like you're already not annoyed by the characters.
Yeah, dude, and he's sitting there and he's eating, and it's like the grossest eating anyone has ever done in a movie. Like, he's just like slopping that stuff everywhere. It's like, oh my gosh, like, I am not a squeamish individual. Like, what franchise are we reviewing here? But like, I can't stand to watch that fat asshole eat gross like that. I don't know. Like, I just can't. I just can't.
I just wanted to give a couple characters a shout out. I ended up, you know,
you picked the worst ones.
I picked Reggie. I liked the nickname Reggie the Reckless, and I liked how like he cared about his grandpa and stuff like that. He wanted to go see his brother, so like he was very family oriented, and he clearly like had the little hots for Pam. He's like, check it out, this is my girlfriend.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel that if they'd gotten Corey Feldman to be young Tommy in this movie, that maybe they wouldn't have had a character like Reggie. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't have. But I feel like I would have loved to see the dynamic between Corey Feldman and that character, because like it could have been like you have like the quiet kind of reserved kid and then the more outgoing kid trying to like get him out of his shell. Like, I feel like they could have had a bit more of a like bonding dynamic, like, and that could have been really good for the movie, but we don't get to see that.
Nope, the Goonies took that away from us, the
Yeah.
rude bastards. No.
Yeah, unfortunate. Goonies didn't spawn 10 sequels, like
That's all right. I chose Reggie though for that. I didn't want to choose Tommy because there wasn't enough there. Pam, although she's the hot blonde of the film, I feel like she didn't give us enough. So I went with the kid who was also like at the other center of attention.
Yeah, he's interesting, and and he has this like good little moment where he scares Tommy with the spider, and he's just like, "You're scared of toys?" He's like, "You're scared of spiders, toy spiders on strings." Like, he's like actively trying to like be like, "Look, dude, like, you should not be as easily startled." Like, he's trying to downplay it because he feels a little bad. It's like, wasn't that wild of a trick, man?
Nope, but like you said before, there's not a whole lot of characters in this one. Those three, Reggie, Pam, and Tommy, Demon, those are about the four you could choose. And he's in the movie for what, maybe 5-7 minutes?
Yeah, he's got like one episode. He's got his episode in the movie. All these characters kind of have their own little vignette, and it's just about a matter of how much you like them.
Yep, so that's the character I went with. I'll go ahead, since you went first there, I'll give you my favorite score for the film. And I went with the main titles. We've spoken on this before, how Harry Manfredini has done so many of these films that the first 6 to 7, even you could go up to Jason Takes Manhattan, a lot of the music is the same and recycled. But I went with the main titles for this one, and that sounds like this.
Yeah, so I agree with that. These a lot of times with these movies, the opening title sequence is kind of the a highlight, sort of sets the stage for what the whole movie sounds like. Because outside of that, it's a lot of kind of like strings and the shocker things and just that kind of dun, 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 like everything just kind of feels a little bit like that. But the opening titles are always good. They always set the mood really well, whether it's like a dream or a nightmare or a flashback or a voiceover. So so yeah, I'm with you there that it's the opening title music.
All right. Did you have a favorite quote from the film?
Yeah, it's a comedic line because it's probably the line that when you hang out with friends in like middle school and whatever, and you watch these horror movies at when you're hanging out or overnight or something, you kind of always just have the little moments that you hold on to and that you joke about with. And for me, it's Demon. When he's like, he goes, "Oh, you're gonna get it, bitch!" Like that line. I don't know why. Like I've probably quoted that line plenty of times from this movie, like not even really recalling that like the way I'm saying it is how he says it from this movie. So I got to go with that one. I have to pay tribute to that line.
And I mean that whole scene with them, like their little pooping duet they call it,
Oh
is
gosh, yeah,
there's
yeah.
some good lines.
Yeah, but speaking of like the sort of like grossness of the movie, you have the dude just slopping up his food, and then you have this dude like getting the shits over here, and like it's just like so much stuff about this movie is just like, ugh, gross, like that's
Them
not
damn
even the kills.
enchiladas.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a hilarious scene. His performance overall is like really kind of funny. Like some of the better stuff in the movie. But yeah, and they do that. I will say though that like that duet is going on for for way too long. Like it's like if there was a bit more of a better song or like they were better singing or something like, but it just goes on a little too long for me.
I ended up choosing the quote that you mentioned earlier from Reggie, which is where he scares Tommy. He drops a little fake spider down from the closet and comes down laughing, and he goes, "You scared of spiders? You scared of rubber spiders? You scared of rubber spiders on string? Man, you are one scared cat." And that just gives me a chuckle because then Tommy turns around with his mask on and he's like, "Whoa!" And Reggie's like, "Yo, man, like what what he did, like he had no expectations of what Tommy was doing, and it kind of threw him for a loop. He's trying to scare the new guy, and he gets it back 10 times worse. And then one of the directors in the behind the scenes thing that I seen was that Reggie was saying, he's like, I can't remember his exact quote, but he's like, the line that he said where the police are showing up and he's like, "Oh, gotta split, catch you later, there's action." And he's like, the director had no idea how a brother talked in 1985. And that just gave me a good laugh, a hard laugh from the stomach, and I was cracking up watching some of this from the interviews and whatnot.
Yeah, that's always fun. Yeah, that line, that moment, like kind of sets up Reggie's whole character for the movie, and that mask that Tommy uses is a nice callback to the final chapter. That's the same kind of monster mask that he had in that movie. So it's a nice little connection there.
Yeah, absolutely. I love seeing the mask that he made in the fourth one, and it's nice to see him brought back. I hate that they had to recast, and we talked about that, but this Tommy did what he could. Clearly he was shut down and still traumatized, and had PTSD and whatever else was wrong with him in this film. But I
Yeah.
for what it was, I mean,
Yeah,
Tommy
I mean,
wasn't a terrible
he
character.
should probably be lucky that he didn't have like more dialogue, considering how sort of cringy and trash heap some of the dialogue in this movie is. He's probably lucky he didn't have much to say.
Yeah, we're thanking him for that. Thank the director. I'll let you go first for your favorite scene, and then I'll take over on our favorite kill or death scene of the film.
Okay, sure, sure. Fate. Well, okay. Well, favorite scene would have to be Demon in the once he's trapped in the outbox, the outhouse, and is under attack. And you've got the spear or the pole being stabbed through the different points, and he's trying to maneuver himself around. Like that scene is probably like my favorite like scene as far as a build up to a kill. Not my favorite kill, but it's my favorite sort of scenario to kind of catch in, because like you can just imagine yourself being in like a confined space, and people are just like stabbing through from the sides and stuff. Like it just freaks you out.
Yeah, that's one of those. That was actually my favorite individual scene as well from the film. Just the entire, I kind of call it again, and it's been known as this, the Demon and Anita's pooping duet, where he goes in there and she starts shaking it, and he's like, "Stop it, hey!" And they get into their little kind of shit talking back and forth, and then he
Literal
hears
shit
her
talking.
kind of gasp. He looks outside, and her throat's slit, and that's where it's like, oh shit! Like you knew something was bound to happen, but then you can't go anywhere, because if you run out the door, there's a killer right outside. So you stay in there, and you're trapped, and you have nowhere to go. That's a scary thought. I mean, even for a movie that's 40 years old, I mean, that's still
Oh,
something that I
don't
never want
say
to get
that.
trapped in a porta potty with a killer
Oh,
outside.
don't say that the movie's 40 years old, because I still have that kind of like, because of the generation when we were kids. I watched all these movies when the 80s was 20 years ago, so to hear like, oh, this movie's 40 years old, it's like, that stings. That stings so much. It's like, I remember when even the first Friday the 13th wasn't 30 years old yet.
Yep, I started watching these late 90s, so I grew up on, Jason Goes to Hell. I won right when Jason X came out, of course, renting that from the video store, Freddy vs. Jason. And it's just,
Yeah,
it
2000 to 2005 was when I was really all up on this slasher movie stuff.
oh yeah. I was probably about the same with like Halloween Resurrection coming out and Halloween H2O. It was like Scream 2, Scream 3, all of those coming out.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll go ahead and I'll get into my favorite kill of the film. And my favorite kill was actually Eddie's, where I don't know if it's a leather strap or like a belt of some kind. I don't know exactly what that was, but he takes the strap and he puts that like log or like tree branch in it and just twists it and like crushes his head. That to me would just absolutely looked terrible. You can hear the crunching and just the just looking at his eyes, it's crushing his head right at his eyes and nose. And I just feel like that would be a terrible way to go.
Yeah, when I was trying to think about my favorite kill from this one, I was going through them, and then I got to that one. I'm in agreement. That's my favorite one as well. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, how does that not jump out at me automatically? Because it's like the most sort of inventive and wild kill. It's like if Jason had pulled that out on somebody in one of these other movies, I feel like it would be a lot of people's one of their favorite kills in the franchise. It's just so simple and so brutal. I'll give a runner up just to have some flavor here, but the clothesline decapitation of Junior as he's riding around on his bike is another one that's really, really good, because it finally gets that annoying fatso out of the movie. and with it's a bit of a cartoony death. It's a little unrealistic to have just like a clothesline decapitation like that, especially when this killer is a normal human and doesn't have like Jason's strength or anything. But it is wild. It's kind of darkly comedic, and I dig it. So that's a fun little runner up. But the Eddie death is definitely the highlight. Even though there's an interesting continuity issue that everyone points out, that the direction which he is twisting and turning the stick to tighten it changes between shots, and so it's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. It's like bad continuity there, but that's okay.
That still bugs me to this day every time I
Yeah.
watch that film.
Yeah, and you can stop lying. We know that your favorite scene in the movie was the scene with Debbie Sue Voorhees as Tina and Eddie before that. You can say that was your favorite scene. I won't judge you.
Fine. Don't tell anyone. No.
I do think it's great, though. I had to mention her name. I do think it's awesome that someone with the last name Voorhees was cast in one of these movies. I think it's a tragedy that she was cast in one of these movies that did not actually have a Voorhees character in the movie. But I think it's cool that someone named Debbie Sue Voorhees got cast in the Friday the 13th movie. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the kills, I mean, I chose the Eddie one because it's probably the kill that I would least want to experience from this film. But
Yeah.
all the other ones are kind of watered down. You know, there are a lot of cutaways. You see like an axe swinging at somebody, but you don't see it actually impale them or anything like that. Thanks to our great MPAA, you know, they
Yeah, I mean, there's also the scene where the road flare through the mouth is a fun one because it's not very bloody, so you get to see quite a bit of it. That's an interesting one. But then the throat slash that's in the car immediately after that, you can even see in the footage that it's an artificial zoom in of the shot to avoid seeing the cut on camera. Like you can see that it's this sort of manufactured zoom in that wasn't a natural camera zoom in to avoid the throat slash, and that always annoys the heck out of me. Uh, One of them that I do like is that when Ethel gets the kind of meat cleaver to the face, it cuts to like a POV shot with like the blood running out kind of from the camera, and I thought that was like a fun compromise and like a cool angle to at least have it if you're not going to show the on-screen violence.
yeah, there's just it. I mean, this one and number 7 were killed the most by the
Oof.
MPAA.
Yeah, it's just brutal. It's brutal. I know for decades people have wanted the footage found and they said that they've looked or that if it's there it's too hard to recover, and what has been found is in pretty poor condition, and it's like on VHS tapes and stuff, like they can't find the proper celluloid and to restore it. So it's like I do have to hold out hope that one day that, like, even if they found low quality materials for a lot of this stuff, that maybe with the use of AI and other techniques and modern technologies and restoration and upscaling, that maybe someday they could kind of get get as much of this as they could get and make it more presentable and kind of get it back into the movies and give us a semblance of at least like partially uncut versions of these movies just for the diehard fans.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. I mean, even if again you get something where part of the film that is restored is a little bit fuzzy or something like a VHS or something like that back in the day, and the rest of the film is a Blu-ray or 4K adaptation of it. I mean, it might be worth seeing, like, because some of like the Friday the 13th Part 7 with the like John Carl Buechler behind the special effects. Some of those like the
Are
just the little
insanely
scenes that you
good.
can see look amazing, the special effects,
Yeah.
and they were all cut out.
And again, you have to think that if they can take like Betamax tape and use AI technology to make it HD, and like, look, it's not like a perfect result, but like with the way AI algorithms and stuff are improving, you have to think that if you're able to show it all the scenes and shots before and after that footage, and then cut that footage in, and then try and use that kind of algorithm to like bring it all up to the same, like, as a point of reference, because it's all about how much data these AI programs have. Like, you have to think that it would be able to give us something again that wouldn't be perfect and seamless, but maybe something that would be like good enough and presentable enough that wouldn't feel like you were just watching some crappy VHS tape.
We can only hope, but most likely they're gonna
Yeah,
leave it at the footage is lost and gone forever.
yeah, they given up. But I mean, that's fair. That's fine. We'll live.
We will. We at least we have the films that we do. You know, in this one, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more coming, especially coming from Friday the 13th Part 4, where that's got some pretty gnarly kills. Like with, and then you
Yeah,
come to this one.
they managed to sneak quite a bit in there. They managed to sneak quite a bit in there, and sometimes I guess it's just, year to year the MPAA is very sort of, at least in the 80s, with all of like the watchdog parents groups and all that stuff, like censorship was like a wild card, and so sometimes it seemed like it felt like however they were feeling that particular Sunday when you submitted this movie, you know. So this one got hit really, really hard, and that doesn't help its legacy at all. You know, if this were, you know, I feel like a movie like Jason Goes to Hell, you know, a lot of people don't like a lot about that movie, but it's the first one that was ever fully available uncut, and it has an insane amount of gore and great kills, and for a lot of people that's enough to like make the movie one of the highlights of the series. So it's like if this film was presented in its sort of fully unfiltered form, you know, imagine how many people would be able to at least appreciate it on that level, you know, for being the slasher schlock that it is, you know.
Well, in the Crystal Lake Memories, it's like I don't know if you've watched it. It's like a 5.5 hour documentary. You can find it on
I've s-
YouTube and stuff.
I've seen big portions of it. I don't know if I've ever seen the whole thing completely, but I've definitely watched my fair share of it.
Okay, I think it was this film they said that, you know, if you cut out a little bit of gore, you can like interchange it for a little bit more nudity, or if you take out some of the nudity, you can add a little bit more gore into it. And the director actually went towards the portion, or like lean towards more nudity in it than gore in this film.
Of course he did. He wanted more boobs. Of course he did.
Yeah, and I mean,
He took one look at Debbie Sue Voorhees and he made his decision right then and there. I mean,
if
fair
nobody
enough.
knows what she looks like back in this film and you haven't seen it, she was very well endowed, you could say.
Yeah, wasn't she the one who was a Playboy playmate at one point, I believe. So, I mean, that tells you a bit.
Right, a Playboy playmate and a director who used to, or her, who started his career in pornography. So
Yeah.
that 2 + 2 must equal 4 when it comes to this one.
Yep. There's probably a 2-hour cut of the movie out there that director kept in his private collection.
Hey, yikes. Well, why don't we go into it's pretty bland here, but what did you think of Roy as Jason and his little getup? What'd you think of the new mask with
I feel like, I feel like the whole dressing up as Jason thing was just to kind of create an air of kind of mystery or intrigue, because like there's no real logical reason why Roy would masquerade as Jason, especially if, like, according to this film, like they have Jason's body, or they even say in this film that he was cremated, although that alleged, you know, apparently is not true, or it's hearsay from what we see in later movies. But it's like, I get, like, if you want to go on a murderous rampage, but it's like you're gonna go through like putting up like a Scooby-Doo disguise to make yourself look like Jason. I don't know. It's a bit much, you know. It's kind of a bland, generic kind of a look, but you know, whatever, I suppose.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I mean, if you're calling your film Friday the 13th, you've already had one whodunit being the first one, and then you come back in this one, and I guess you try to make us believe it's Jason, all while giving us like little hints and signs that it's somebody else. So I mean,
Yeah,
I
and
it's not a terrible look. It's clearly it. I like I said earlier, it was an imposter look for an imposter Jason. So I mean,
and
it
doesn't
kind of
he get
adds up.
his and doesn't he get his shoulder or his hand like seriously wounded at one point, and then he kind of keeps on trucking, you know?
Yeah, Pam slices him with a running chainsaw down the shoulder.
Yeah, yes, yeah. And it's like, it's like there's not really, it's like you're asking me to take some leaps here. It's like I can take the leap with Jason. It's like it's hard to take a leap that this guy is just so crazy that he can have anywhere close to like a Jason ability of taking damage or super strength or whatever, you know. And it's and the whole thing of like the reveal of it's Roy. It's like when they look down and they see like the mask off and like his face, I don't know if anyone in the audience seeing this for the first time sees that, like the face reveal, and is like, "Oh my gosh, that's Roy." Like, I don't know if anyone even like knows the character well enough to be like, "Oh, so that's who it was," you know? And like, it's like I don't think anyone would makes the connection on site. Like, it's just like, "Oh, well, it's not Jason; it's someone disguised," and then they explain who it was, you know?
Yeah, and one thing I always thought is how he got that picture of Joey in his wallet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because that clearly that was a recent picture. So,
Yeah, yeah,
some
yeah.
things
That
just aren't adding up.
yeah. Well, and this is his kid that he. This is his kid that he. I forgive me if I don't remember the details, but he abandoned the kid. Is that it? That's why the kid's in that home, like, because he's abandoned him. Is that it?
He
Or
wasn't around when he was born, I believe, and the mother
okay,
passed away while giving birth or something of that
okay,
of that
okay.
sort.
So it's like, so he like he's like simultaneously like didn't give a crap about this kid, but also kind of was like horribly like grieved when his kid was dead, and like, and I can understand that, of like, oh, this is the kid I never loved and now he's dead, and like, so like all that, like, but like they don't really play into like the pathos of that, like it's just kind of like, it's all kind of like wild and hokey, it's like, oh geez. And also like, there was one review, I can't take credit for this, there was a great YouTube review that pointed out like, at the beginning, like, maybe you shouldn't let uh someone like Vic have like access to an axe, like if he's like a guy with like anger problems and is that unstable, maybe he shouldn't even have an axe, and then to go even further into the absurdity, it's like he's being annoying to him, and like, what's the last thing he says to him? Like, you're out of line, and that makes him snap and axe murder him, like, it's like someone calls you an a-hole and you're just like, well, death has been chosen, like, it's just like one absurdity after another. It's like one of the weird, like, this is a weird entry in the franchise.
Yeah, Joey tries to offer him the candy bar and he cuts it in half and he goes, "Well, forget it. Just forget it." And he tells him he's out of line and so long for Joey, spoiler alert.
Yeah, don't you dare tell me I'm out of line if I have an axe in my hand, because it's going in your back.
Yeah, don't ever try to offer me a candy bar again.
Yeah, like, it's so extreme. It's like, oof, oof.
Well, I think that's all we got for Roy. Not a kind of a boring character. Like you said, I know I didn't recognize who it was. Hell, the
Yeah,
first,
exactly.
even after watching it and seeing like, oh, it's this guy, like you rewind and you look back and it's like, is that really him laying there though? Like it still almost doesn't look like that character.
Yeah, yeah, and you only kind of like, I think this was one of the things where I'm pretty sure that I knew the plot or the twist of this movie before I saw it, because there were websites like Friday the 13th films.com and things like that, that when you get into a series as a kid, you're like, "Oh, I want to look it up and I want to read what happens and I want to know." And like, so it's like I knew, like, by osmosis, that like the killer in this one was not Jason, and the line, like, I knew that the character's name was Roy, and then like the line, like, "Come on, Roy, get your hands dirty." It's like I knew it going in that the Roy guy was the twist killer, and like, if I wasn't going in with that info, like, it never would have registered to me of like who it was. I only know it because I knew it going in, and I was looking for that character from the get go.
Okay, yeah, because I definitely used to do that as a kid. I did that with the Halloween films all the time because they used to have a bunch of fan made websites about that, and they still do all over. Like the Friday the 13th wiki, the Halloween wiki,
Yeah,
Godzilla
now
wiki.
they're all wikis, but they used to be, man, when they were dedicated domains, they were very interesting. I don't know if it was called halloweenmovies.com, but there was definitely Friday the 13th films.com. I remember being on that website all the time before Freddy versus Jason came out. I miss those days, but now it's all in the wikis, it's all on wiki.
Yep, it sure is. And I mean, it makes it easier for me to do a little bit of research on all these. I mean, there's a couple different websites I go on to try to find all the information I need or want, but
I remember you could look up the body count of every movie, and then they also had like a running tally of Jason's body count throughout the franchise, because I was always quite annoyed that in Jason X, when they say that he's killed nearly 200 people, I was like, well, the body count in the movies isn't quite up that high yet, so that line didn't make sense to me. I was like, they better add on a lot of kills in Freddy versus Jason.
There's that continuity error that Chris is our continuity guy.
Yeah, I know. I've got movie OCD. I can't help it.
I mean, I do too in certain aspects. So we are one in the same.
Do you remember reading up about the mythical producer's cut of Halloween 6?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I remember. Oh man, I remember just like losing my mind, hoping that like, oh my gosh, the producer's cut's gotta be out on DVD one day. They've got to put it out. It would be so cool, you know. And then by the time it finally ever happened, which was years and years later on Blu-ray, it's like it was way past the point where I cared as much, you know. It's like I didn't really give a crap at that point. We're kind of rambling on here. This is just kind of a vibe and episode, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, I think that is all we have
Oh,
besides our
yeah,
tier or our franchise ranking so far.
yeah, the rankings of the film. So I will let you. Well, no, I'll go first this time. I'll go first this time on the rankings because I feel like mine are going to be less interesting than yours. So if I'm going to rank the 5 Friday the 13th movies up to this point, I will. I'll go first to last this time. I will put Friday the 13th, the final chapter, as my favorite. I will put Part 2 as my second favorite. I'll put Part 3 as my third favorite. I'll put the original as my fourth, and I will put Part 5 as my least favorite entry in the franchise. It just all comes down to the fact that it's not Jason, and a lot of the characters are really, really annoying and cringy, and so it just doesn't do it for me in enough ways that this is the worst one for me.
Well, you know what? You said mine were going to be more interesting than yours, and we have the exact same opinion.
Oh, really? Okay, fair
Yep,
enough.
I'm also going. I'll go bottom to top since you went top to bottom. And Friday the 13th, a new beginning is number 5. The original Friday the 13th is number 4. Friday the 13th Part 3 is number 3. Friday the 13th Part 2 is number 2, and Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, is my favorite to this point in our rankings and reviewing of the franchise.
Interesting. I don't know why I had a thought that you were going to put this one above the original. I don't know why.
When a couple years ago I went back and forth on that, but then when it comes to I looked at them both as a who done it, and the original blows this one out of the water for a who done it.
Yeah, I think you're especially contrarian if you put this one above the original. Even though most people don't love a lot of things about the original, I think you got to be a little bit of just looking for attention. If you're like, oh, Part 5's totally better than the first one, it's like, that's a bit much. No disrespect to Debbie Sue Voorhees, but you know, this is not. It's not enough to make this better than the worst spot for me.
Nope, and I mean there's someone out there that thinks that, so no disrespect to your opinion, but it
Yeah,
sucks.
well,
I'm just kidding.
well, I mean, like I said, there are some fans that they rate it. They rate it on body count and boobies, and that's all they rate these movies on. So I mean, I'm sure they're out there.
Absolutely, but I'll go into some final thoughts on the film. I still, if you've never seen it, I still recommend this film just just for nostalgia factor from when I was younger and watching it. You know, if you haven't seen these and you're a horror fan or a movie fan in general, you have to give them a once over. So I mean, give it a try. I mean, it is a sleazy and kind of trashy, like almost a film that makes you feel like, maybe I should go shower before I go to bed, like after you watch it. But it's not if it wasn't Friday the 13th as the name, it might not be a terrible film. If it was just a random killer with like a hooded sack, like the town that dreaded sundown or something random like that, it might be a
Yeah,
bit more of a popular film. But all in all, it deserves one viewing from every horror movie fan out there.
yeah, and you can kind of think of it as like a weird dream or nightmare that Tommy Jarvis had in between Part 4 and Part 6, where it's kind of like off the books, you know, like it's all some kind of like in his head thing, you know, because it's like the continuity in the canon isn't really strong. You know, it kind of jumbles some things. Like they say Jason's cremated in this one, and then he's not cremated in the next one, and all this other stuff. So it's like it's kind of like off the books, but it's not really off the books. So you know, it's interesting. But being a weaker entry in the series, it really makes you appreciate the better ones.
Yes, it absolutely does. I'll agree with you on that. And we have a very good one coming up next week, as this film was followed by Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, which was released August 1st, 1986, and we will be looking at that on our next episode. And that, Chris, for me, that is one of the ones that I have to put on, and I have to sit down and maybe grab some popcorn or order a pizza and just enjoy that for what it is.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir, buddy.
Awesome. So that should be a fun and good episode to get into next week. But until then, I think I will once again, Chris, say thank you for joining me as we're making our way through the Friday the 13th franchise just as we did the Godzilla franchise.
Yeah, making our way downtown.
Walking fast. No.
That's the closing music for this episode.
Hey, don't tempt me because I'll do it.
You have the power. You have the power to do this.
Making my way downtown, walking fast, faces pass and I'm homebound.
All right, let me get you out of here. I'll say thank you for joining me. Thanks to anyone who's out there listening, and until next time.
Have a great one.
You scared of spiders? You scared of rubber spiders? You scared of rubber spiders on strings? Man, you are one scared cat. Thank you.